Okay, I am Sean Wilson, your general manager. The first thing I would ask you is if you have your cell phones, please put your cell phones on silent or vibrate so that the phones aren't going to go off once we get started. We're going to get started here in a minute with the dance competition. I'm not going to dance, sorry. Okay, what the purpose is, when we have an election, this year you have 4 spots that are going to be open. You have 5 candidates that will be competing for those 4 spots. You'll have a board of directors now that is comprised of 7 directors. The way that it works in subsequent years is it'll go 4, and then the next year will be 3, and then it goes back to 4. So that's how it will rotate. So this coming year we have 4 of them, 5 candidates that are competing for that. When we do an election, we do everything under 718 condo code. In my life, I've probably done over 100 condominium and association elections. It's nice to have something like this tonight. This is not required by law, but what it does is it gives you an opportunity to hear key questions that residents have put forward for those potential directors. And with that, I would like to introduce our moderator for tonight. Let's hear it for Mr. Tom Flynn.
Good evening and welcome. Good to see everybody here tonight. Any Kansas City Chiefs fans out there? It was a great game, wasn't it? Of course, the Patriots weren't playing and didn't see Tom Brady on the field. Oh, anyway. All right. Okay. Well, as Sean mentioned, this is a sort of a different thing this year. There'll be 7 people that will be sitting on the board of directors. And tonight we have 5 candidates vying for 4 seats on that board. Let me introduce you to them right now. Jerry Callahan, Steve Daly, Ron Meyer, Kathy Mitzke, and Carl Triola. I point this out every year, and it's important. Particularly for the newer people here, these positions are unpaid. This is voluntary. They receive no compensation for it whatsoever. And it takes a lot more than just a couple of meetings a month. Each of these candidates, if successful and they become board members, will be liaison to a number of committees that we have, the Recreation Committee, Golf Committee, Tennis Committee, so on and so forth. So it takes a real commitment of time and effort, and so please join with me in welcoming our candidates tonight. Okay, we'll move right along. Let me find my place here. Okay, so program rules. Each candidate will have up to 2 minutes to address the residents with their opening statement. Following their statements, I'll begin with the questions for the candidates that you've submitted. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond to those questions. A couple of things before we begin. The program, we figure, is probably going to last about an hour and 15 minutes or so. And following the program, we have the refreshments. The back, we have some, I think, cookies that Jordan provided, along with coffee and water and the like. And if some of the questions that you have in mind haven't been asked tonight, feel free to go up to any candidate or all of them and ask additional questions if you wish. We received probably about 10 questions, very good questions. There were a lot of duplicates, and so we selected 5 questions that fairly represent the important issues that face our community. The questions are general in nature. They're not directed to any specific candidate, so that all candidates will have an opportunity to weigh in. I've selected the order so that no candidate has first time out and another candidate the last time. So I'm going to mix it up tonight. One thing, regardless of their positions on these important issues, we all want to remain courteous and respectful to our candidates. And after, as I mentioned, after the, or I guess I did mention this, they'll have a 1-minute closing statement. So, are you folks ready?
Yes.
All right, well, I'm going to start with Steve Daly for the 2-minute statement.
Thank you. My name is Steve Daly, and I'm running for the board because I'm passionate about taking care of the future of Seven Lakes. I believe that my experience as a business lawyer handling complex contracts, employment law, financial matters, and litigation and also technology can really benefit the residents. To take one example, January of 2019, the Florida condominium law was amended to add some transparency requirements for Florida condominiums. Condominiums had until January 2019 to comply, and Seven Lakes missed the deadline. And I know Sean's aware, Sean's working on it, but I think to take another example, the Seven Lakes is right now in the middle of a difficult dispute with Blue Stream over its contract and its performance under the contract. We just settled a very troubling lawsuit involving the pro shop. I think Seven Lakes would benefit from having an experienced business lawyer on the board. A few things about me. I created a legal website, Law Server. I still run that website. Before that, I was an attorney for Morgan Stanley and Discover Financial. There I handled litigation, intellectual property, technology matters. Before that, from 89 to 97, I was a litigator in a business litigator in a Chicago firm. I served on the faculty of the National Business Institute, and I co-authored 2 books on commercial real estate law. I received my law degree from the University of Virginia and my undergraduate degree at New York University. My wife Sheila and I are from the Chicago area. Sheila would be here tonight, but a close friend of ours passed away in Minneapolis, and she's attending that tonight. I served as treasurer and president of the Long Range Planning Committee for the schools and on the Education Foundation. Thank you very much.
Okay. Gary Cohen.
Thank you, Seven Lakers, for giving me the opportunity to serve on the board of directors for these past 4 years. During this time, I have submitted over 50 goals to the board. Tonight, I'd like to give you a brief mention of 7 items which have come or are coming to fruition, and which I believe will add to the quality and safety of our lives here at Seven Lakes. The infrastructure has always been front and center for me. I advocated the installation of 2 new discharge pumps. These pumps have been installed and has resulted in our being able to get rid of water more quickly and to avoid much of the flooding experienced previously. Number 2, replace all the interconnect pipes. This will be done this year in conjunction with the golf course renovation. Resurface the asphalt roads in the maintenance and tennis court areas near the administration building. This will begin as soon as the permits which have been applied for are received. Verify that there will be no encroachment onto the condo property as a result of the golf course renovation. Plastic fences are to be installed on the condo property lines. Install cameras in the atrium and other areas for added safety and security. Soon after some of the cameras were installed, we were able to determine that items were being stolen from the tea room. This is when we had the tea room ourselves, resulting in the release of 2 employees. There are now 17 cameras installed throughout the community, but several more are needed. And I'll give you an example. Had cameras been installed at the swimming pools, we would have been able to know more about the circumstances of the unfortunate death of a resident at one of the pools this last year. Extend the hours of the back gate. The back gate is now open until 9 p.m. rather than 7:30 p.m. at no additional cost. I have 2 paragraphs. Small. We implemented the processes and procedures necessary to satisfy the liability concerns of the insurance carrier in order to keep the wood shop open. And, oh, did I forget to mention that in the past years, I have recommended lights for tennis courts 5 and 6. The lights are not there yet, but I will continue to make that one of my goals if I am re-elected to the board, and along with other goals which incorporate ideas favored by the residents and which will continue to enhance and secure our community. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Jerry. Steve, in the interest of fairness, do you want to give it another 15, 20 seconds?
Sure, I just want to make note, I just want to add that Sheila and I have owned here at Seven Lakes since 2009. We lived here since 2015. We became full-time Florida residents in 2017. That's when we sold our home up north. That's all I wanted to add. Thank you.
Okay, Kathy, 2 minutes and 15 seconds.
I don't know if I'll make 2 minutes. Good evening. Thank you for coming tonight. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Kathy Miskey. My husband Don and I have been full-time residents at Seven Lakes since moving here after I retired in April of 2017. My professional career spanned over 40 years as a legal secretary and an executive assistant. During that time, I worked closely with various CEOs, presidents, and senior executives at Bankers Life and Trust Company, First Chicago, which is now known as Chase Bank, Mesereau Real Estate, GTCR, and Lazard Frere. Those 2 companies are private equity firms in Chicago. The final 17 years of my career were spent working under the direction of a corporate partner at Kirkland & Ellis, which is a law firm in Chicago. It was there that I gained an in-depth understanding of condominium rules and bylaws. I also served on an HOA board before moving to Seven Lakes in Illinois. For the past 8 months, I've been serving on the board of directors here at Seven Lakes. I also attend various committee meetings to help me understand the issues facing our community. Being a full-time resident here at Seven Lakes allows me to know what's happening in our community on a daily basis. In addition to the golf course, there are still projects to do in and around Seven Lakes. The tennis courts, the roads, infrastructure, etc. Blue Stream is the biggest area of contention in our community right now. Many of our residents are having difficulty changing over from Comcast, learning to use a new cable remote, and trying to fix their TV with the basic issues on a regular basis. I'm happy to be able to help residents that have asked for assistance with some of the smaller issues that I'm qualified to do. And yes, I do make house calls. So thank you for your time and consideration. It would be an honor for me to have your vote so that I can help improve Seven Lakes and make it be the wonderful community that we all loved here and moved here to enjoy.
Okay, thank you, Kathy. Ron, go right ahead.
Thank you. I would like to thank all of you for attending today. For almost a decade, my wife and I have been residents of Seven Lakes Golf and Tennis Community. We've thoroughly enjoyed the people we've met, the friends we've made, and the numerous amenities our community has to offer. When the new board position was added, I felt I was given an opportunity to give something back to our community. Therefore, I'd like to offer the administrative experience, knowledge, and skills I've accumulated during my 20-plus years in administrative positions to help our community continue offering a wonderful retirement experience for our residents as your 7th board member. While in Pennsylvania, I served on community nonprofit boards and held officer positions in several community service organizations. As a resident of Seven Lakes, I've served on the Finance Committee, and I'm presently the chairperson of the Long Range Planning Committee. My time living at Seven Lakes has taught me that retirement community populations change over time, and the services and amenities provided to residents need to keep pace with the changing residents' preferences. The positions I've held in the past have helped me to become very familiar with the organizational and resident needs of our community and the multiple Florida statutes governing condominium associations. My administrative experience has taught me that the best decisions are based on actual data. They're not based on emotion or intuition or observation alone. Now, at times, this seems like you're slowing down the process of implementing a project, but in actuality, the board is doing its due diligence to reduce the risk to an association. I believe board members must always act in a professional manner and be courteous when interacting with each other. This is an essential quality of all successful boards. If elected, I will attend all board workshop meetings and regular board meetings. My status as a 6-month resident or snowbird will not interfere with my board responsibilities. I have 4.5 years as a superintendent in the Catasauqua Area School District. We manage the school district with a budget of $15 million. I did an interim superintendency for quite a while they were searching for their regular superintendent at Stroudsburg Area School District. Their budget at that time was $70 million. I worked in the Pocono Mountain School District for 15 years as a principal and assistant superintendent. We were the fastest growing school district in the state of Pennsylvania. We grew from 3,000 students to 12,000 students. I have a background in building construction. I was in charge of all of the building construction at that time. When I left the Pocono Mountain School District, we had a budget of $100 million. I'm familiar with a lot of the things that boards do because this board runs very similar to the way that we ran our school district boards. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom. Good evening, and thank you for being here. Rather than talk about my bio, which you can read, I'm going to talk about areas of importance which need to be addressed in our community. Seven Lakes is undergoing a renaissance that I've been part of as a board member and president of the board. This rebirth has resulted in redesign of the main building, exercise and fitness room, the lapidary, the addition of pickleball courts, fiber optic cable throughout the community, new pumps to improve drainage, renovation of the golf course, and identification of infrastructure needs. However, to complete the rebirth, we need to address the renovation of the tennis courts, develop a strategic infrastructure plan, and complete a reserve study of association funds. This is possible. Let me give you a brief example. Because we budgeted carefully and planned our road reserves, we have approximately $616,000 for paving in our roads next year. And I guarantee you that we will get them done. To further aid in the rebirth process, I am proposing the establishment of a planning and allocation committee to coordinate long-range planning and funding to make informed decisions based on sound fiscal practices. Further, initiate a new accounting system to facilitate fiscal planning, which is easy to understand and ensures that our funds are being carefully monitored. Like the two committees I initiated when I first got on the board. The insurance committee that ended up giving back to the community $400,000. Many of you will remember that. And the finance committee that gave us security, liquidity, and finally we were getting interest for our money. I'm very proud of those accomplishments. We as a community can achieve these goals because we have individuals in our community who have skill sets necessary to meet the goals. Residents who demonstrated during Hurricane Irma the can-do attitude to improve our community, and our current general manager and staff who take as much pride as we do in our community. I will continue to be transparent, fiscally responsible, and look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you, Carl. Okay, now we're going to get into the questions. I'm going to ask candidates to answer them. I've mixed it up so that not everybody goes first. So the first question we have is an interesting one. It deals with Bluestream. Everybody hear about Bluestream, have you? Okay. This is for Mary Gormley, building 50A. Bluestream. What are you willing to do to solve the problems the community is experiencing with this server? For instance, I like to take most programs and view them at my convenience, fast forwarding when I want to watch when I want. My experience with Comcast was easy and satisfactory. With Bluestream, it's difficult and mind-boggling. Will you work to help someone who is used to experiencing good service get the same service with this new server named Bluestream? Okay, so right out of the gate, Carl, would you address that for 2 minutes?
Sure. The most important thing that has happened with Bluestream, the Bluestream contract, is that the community now has fiber optic cable throughout the community. And hopefully, Mary, this will at least get us off on a good start. Because of the fiber optic cable, we have fast speed internet system, which has worked well, with the exception of the time that Comcast cut the cable. The problem that we have, and the problem that you have experienced with Bluestream, I'm as frustrated and as upset as you are, in that the TV signal has not functioned as it should have. As you have been made aware of by the general manager, at least I hope the community's been made aware of and read the eyes and ears, the board, the general manager, the current board, is working diligently with Bluestream to bring in a new system to make certain that television systems work at the highest level. This new system is called part of a TiVo operation, and you'll hear more about that, and it'll be explored in more detail. We have a strong contract with Bluestream. Steve Daly was on that committee when we developed that contract. And it will be enforced so that not only do we have a quality internet system, but also quality TV. For 85% of the community, because of the addition of the internet, there has been a savings in your monthly fees. And if I'm elected to the board, I will work diligently to improve and to facilitate that new contract. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. Reset the timer here. Okay, Kathy, you're next.
Bluestream has been an issue for everyone in the community. And one of the things that I've noticed, that people have problems with the remote. I've been trying as much as anyone else to record, fast forward, and there are programs that allow it. But some of them are because they have contracts. They don't allow you to skip the commercials. Part of their advertising agreement is that you can't fast forward through commercials. Recordings, upon occasion, are out. You go back to look for them, they're not there. But I found that you can call Regina and she is able to restore them over the phone. So if that helps, I don't know. We're still missing our channel 195, which they've promised that they're looking into and they're working on it. So hopefully we'll get that soon. And Damien's been on site with Regina. He came over to my house the other day when I had a problem hooking up a new television. I couldn't get sound, and he took less than 5 seconds to fix it. I asked him what it was. He said, I cleared the cache. I was like, what's a cache? It's the volume in your little box, and there's all these codes. And I said, well, what code did you push? He goes, don't worry about it. I said, that's how you guys keep your business going. I guess you won't tell us all the tricks, but anyway, he fixed it, so I was happy that the TV was working. I do hope that we keep the techs on site as long as we can. They're in the contract, and we're pushing for everything we can to fix the issues of buffering, which is what Carl mentioned, using the new TiVo boxes that they're promising us now.
Okay, Kathy, thank you. All right, the next up is Jerry.
Thank you, Tom. Probably most of you may not remember what really precipitated this whole process. Back 2 general managers ago, he put out an email to Seven Lakes and asked for their comments regarding Comcast. The next day, he had over 150 emails criticizing and running down Comcast with the idea that something has to be done. So based on that, the board looked into the alternatives. I, like everyone else, have the same problems that you have. It's being worked on now, though this is not my particular expertise. IT is not my expertise. However, we have a committee that was formed that went over and looked at these various suppliers of TV and internet service. Based on these people, they come to the board and say, this is what we recommend. Based on these people, my vote went for Comcast, or to Bluestream. That's it.
Okay. Thank you, Jerry. Next up is Ron.
Thank you. I think our committee has done a really good job selecting Bluestream. I'm not saying that we don't have a lot of problems, but I think what they offer us has a lot of value and adds value to our community. The idea of installing a fiber optic cable in the community lends itself to thinking about the future because of all the bandwidth requirements that are needed with all the things that we do with computers and in streaming today. So I think we're looking at the forefront, and the committee's got to be commended for all the work that they did. I've had experience working with fiber optic companies as we installed fiber optics in a lot of school districts. And one of the things that's basically all of them have in common is that they all have problems after they install their equipment. It can be for a lot of different reasons, but basically in this time, it's either some software problems or some hardware problems. It's not necessarily in the fiber itself, but they always seem to have problems. What we need to do and what we are doing is we're following the contract language to make sure we don't violate anything in the contract, the way that we resolve the issues that we're having with Bluestream. And therefore, they are the ones who are going to be responsible for things. We don't want to make us the reason why there may be some litigation in the future and we don't get things done. So I would continue to do exactly what we're doing. We're meeting with the contractors. We're asking the residents to continuously send us information so that we can make a decision and we can share that information with Bluestream so they know what's going on and we can address these problems. But what you do have is a fiber optic cable network in your community, and that's a real advantage.
Okay, thank you, Ron. Steve.
Thanks, Mary, for that question. The IT committee met in July of 2018 and took a vote on who to eliminate from consideration. The vote was 6-1. I was the only member of the committee that voted to eliminate Bluestream from consideration. And the reasons I gave at that time, and you can read them in the minutes, I said that this is an 8-year contract. This is a long-term engagement. Customer service is paramount. And also, I said that I visited the Hotwire facility and was very impressed with Hotwire. Hotwire is a larger and more established competitor to Bluestream. I say this, and I'm not saying it to criticize anyone on the committee. They all made their decision in what they thought was the best interests of Seven Lakes. They saw a deal that was too good to pass up. I saw a deal that was too good to be true. What now? Mary, that's really what your question is. Well, Section 4B of the contract says that Bluestream is going to install a system that is adequate to provide the TV services. Section 4 says that they're going to train and educate all of the residents in how to use the services and all the equipment. Section 7 says that they're going to restore the property back to the condition it was in before they arrived. The contract says that they're going to provide us channels 195. Does anyone here think that Bluestream has met its obligations? No. What I would do if I were elected is I would encourage Sean to let Bluestream know that the residents have elected a business litigator to the board. He was opposed to hiring Bluestream, and he's interested in hiring Hotwire to replace you. And then if Hotwire charges us more, he wants to charge you for the difference. I think when Sean delivers that message, I think we'll have no trouble getting our phone calls returned. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, question number 2. This deals with future capital projects, and it's really a 2-part question submitted. We compiled 2 questions. One was submitted by Martha Whipple, the Condo 25, and the other one, Jeff Mann. So, let me begin here. What large projects do you feel that the board needs to address in the next 2 years? That's 2 years.
Would you repeat that, please, Tom?
Sure. What large projects do you feel that the board needs to address in the next 2 years? And of course, the $64,000 question is, how would you budget for future projects, such as renovations to buildings, other infrastructure items, and the next required renovation of the golf course, tennis courts, and other amenities? And we are going to, Steve, we're going to keep you on the mic. You go first this time.
Okay. Well, that's a big question. I'll try to tackle at least most of it. Well, the board has announced the next major project that it has on its plate is a tennis court renovation. As many of you know, that project it was 10 years ago that the tennis committee flagged to the board the safety concerns that it had with the tennis complex, and I'm talking about courts 1 through 4. The safety concerns mainly had to do with the fact that spectators wind up sitting and standing on the edge of traffic, on the edge of roadways, Leisure Drive and the tennis maintenance road. 7 years ago, the work began in earnest to start getting bids and make plans to replace the courts and renovate the courts. At this point, they've exceeded their estimated useful life. The drainage and irrigation underneath the courts is deteriorated. And the fence is falling down. We patch it and put Band-Aids on it every year, but similar to what happened with the golf course, we've just been limping by. Obviously, I'm very supportive of that project moving forward. It would not require any assessment of the residents. Every year, the residents here sock away about $14,000 to go toward the replacement of the tennis courts. And as a result, we have healthy reserves available to fund this project. And I don't believe it's going to, there's no issue of having any assessment imposed. In addition, tennis players have donated in excess of $100,000 to help pay for this project. So it is very, very affordable, and it's especially thanks to these generous donors. I think the road that's already been mentioned, the road that is the maintenance, so-called maintenance road that goes between the pool 1 and the tennis courts is obviously a very, very high priority. That's already on the front burner. The other area, Seven Lakes has made a huge amount of progress in recent years, but the other area that really is looking dilapidated is the shuffleboard and bocce court area. The shelters there are seriously rusted and need attending to. Thank you.
And the next one up is Jerry Callahan. Keep in mind that that's a 2-part question. What are the projects and how we're going to pay for it? Jerry?
Thank you, Tom. I sort of have to mimic Steve a little bit in as much as the tennis courts are probably at the forefront, but not necessarily at the front. I think the roads are probably at the front. I'm always concerned about the infrastructure. Actually, the immediate concern that we have right now is the tea room contract. So that needs to be looked at and negotiated very, very soon. Pickleball is always an issue. It's a growing sport. We only have 2 courts. They would like another 1 or 2. Lights on the tennis court in 5 and 6 needs to be installed. As far as paying for all these amenities being brought up to date, I think we have mostly enough in our reserves to pay for most of this as we go. It cannot all be done in 1 year, for example, the roads. But we're putting money away for each one of these items as we go down the road. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Jerry. Okay, the next one up is Ron.
Thank you. Florida statute 718 requires condominium associations to put money aside every year for roofs, paving, and painting in any item that costs more than $10,000. So by statute, we're required to look at all of our infrastructure. We're looking to see for what the association owns, what needs to be paved, what needs to be painted, what roofs need to be fixed, and how much that's going to cost over time. And we are mandated to put money into a fund that can only be spent for paving, roofing, or painting, or items that are exceeding the cost of $10,000. So the district has been doing a good job at that they collect that money, that's part of your assessment, and that goes in, and that's how we can fund a lot of these projects. That's where the money comes from. The problem that we had with the golf course and some other projects is that we didn't reserve for those items in the past. The way it was set up, it wasn't reserved for. One of the things that the board should be doing, they have a reserve fund and a reserve format, but every 5 to 10 years, most associations will perform a reserve study. They bring in an organization, a professional organization that does reserve studies. They have them in Florida that do a lot of reserve studies here in this area. And they come in and they look at every piece of equipment, all your buildings and all your assets. They look at your paving, your roofing, your painting, and they help to decide what it's going to cost so many years down the road, how much money you should be putting aside every year for your roads, your paving, and your roofings, and these other pieces of equipment. So when those time periods come due, we have the money available for us, just like you have in your condo buildings, you reserve for things. One of the things that we haven't been reserving for, though, were some of the infrastructure in the condos. And I think that we have to begin to look at that. The irrigation systems are probably part of the condo reserve requirements, and they're not reserved for. And so there are things that we need to make different condos aware of, that what they should be thinking that they may have to start putting reserves away for, because down the road, just like the irrigation in the golf course, and we saw the pictures, our irrigation around our condominium buildings are the same type of piping, and they're breaking the same as they were before. And eventually they're going to need to be repaired, so we should be reserving for those things. So I think that we pay for them through our reserve fund, and we make sure that we know what needs to be funded, and we fully fund those reserves. It may mean that at times somebody might have to say, well, I'm not going to be here in 15 years, but we have a responsibility while we're using these elements to be contributing to the eventual replacement of these elements, so that we don't fall far behind in any of our funding. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Okay, Kathy, you're next.
The next upcoming project that we do have, that we've been considering, is the tennis courts, the renovation of the tennis courts. And as Steve mentioned, we do have the money to cover it. It won't require an assessment, so far as we know. The engineering study for the tennis courts is now in progress. So once we get that from them, it should show us a better, clearer picture, and we can start the bids on the tennis courts and the completion of them. We'll know for sure then the cost. The other projects that I think were next in line would probably be the paving of the roads. We have $616,000 set aside now, and we don't have to do every road at once. So as we put more money in year by year, we should have enough to cover the roads as well. The only thing that we did not allow for in the past was the golf course. And we're going to be putting, I believe it's $12,000 a year in for the golf course, even though it's going to be renovated. But the reserve study that the board has agreed to put into motion is going to show us if we're lacking in any of the other reserves that we've been keeping for the association. And if we have, we can up those or adjust them accordingly. We also need an inflation factor put in those, because as we know, a roof that we might think costs $20,000 or $50,000 today may be $75,000 or $100,000 in 10 or 15 years or whenever they need to be replaced. So we need an inflation factor to allow for that. But as Ron mentioned, we do have a responsibility for any items over $10,000, $10,000 and above, to reserve for those items. And the condominiums can benefit from our reserve study by knowing what they should be reserving for in their buildings as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kathy. And Carl, you're up.
Yeah. What two large projects need to be addressed, or what large projects need to be addressed in the next year? There are a number of them, but as been mentioned, I think that the big one obviously is the tennis courts. I won't dwell on that. But the most important one in my mind is the infrastructure of the roads. And I think if we were to create, as I've mentioned, a planning and allocation committee to first of all address what our long-range planning needs are, and then we do the reserve study to find out whether we're accurate in terms of those numbers, then I think we can look at how we're going to fund them. But I think when you're talking about funding, first of all, you need to religiously stick to the budget. And one of the things that you have to realize is that inflation does cause rising fees, and that there will be times when we will have to have assessments to cover emergencies such as hurricanes, major water breaks, and so on. Nobody likes to hear the word assessments. But as a friend of mine, and he's sitting in the audience tonight, and I'm proud to call him a friend, Dick Krieger has stated at a board meeting, if some of you were there, that we should develop a policy that makes it clear that any emergency fund over $100,000 should result in an assessment to cover the cost of an emergency. Hurricane Irma, which I'm extremely familiar with, and the Tea Room lawsuit resulted in over $1 million in costs which were not budgeted. There were no assessments to cover these expenses. But to cover these costs, we cut operational expenses severely and legitimately used reserve accounts for roof repairs, painting, deferred maintenance, and both of these badly damaged the operational reserve budgets. So we need to make sure that we do have money to pay for things when we don't have them in the budget, and they will occur. Our buildings are old. Our condos are going to have to be responsible. They're going to have to take the leadership in determining what needs to be done in their condos. And it's expensive. All of you that live in the condos, if you've done your homework, you know this. Also, I think in terms of the board, the association funding, we've been very fortunate with our reserve account. And if I had time, I would go over it, because I was the board member, and there was no one at the finance committee, no one from this audience. There was nobody in the community except the board members. And I found out that we had more money in the reserve paving account, and that's where the $613,000 comes from.
Thank you, Carl. If anybody wants to take a look at that data over a chocolate chip cookie and a cup of coffee, Carl will have that available. All right, the next question is from Janet and John Albridge, condo 24. A great condo, by the way. I moved here almost 6 years ago because it's a tennis and golf community, which is part of my search criteria. We absolutely love it here, but it's important to me and my husband to know your position on the tennis project. I know we've talked about that, but I think Mr. and Mrs. Albridge would like to see a definitive position where you folks are on that project. So, I am going to start with Kathy Miskey.
We've talked about the tennis project, and as I mentioned earlier, the engineering study is being done now so that we can get our bids in order and take a look at the costs. But what we've seen so far as what estimates look like are that we do have enough money to cover it. We're planning for a shade structure, seating area, new courts, and there will be drainage underneath the courts, which is something we need from Florida Water Management. That's all I know. That's it, yeah.
I know that we have discussed the tennis project before, but Ron, would you like to elaborate?
I support the tennis project 100%, and I also support the way that the board's going about gathering the data. If you want to make an informed decision, you've got to have accurate data, and they're doing that by getting the engineering studies. And they're following the process that they use when they, and at least this board, when they gave you the presentation in November, I think it was. It was an excellent presentation. It was well done because of all the planning that they did. They could bring all those people in here and explain to us exactly what was going to occur. That process is very important, and it was very well run. We're following the same process, I understand, in order to work with the tennis courts. So I support the tennis courts. I like the process that we're doing, and sounds like we're going to be able to fund it through the reserve funding and some of the donations that the tennis committee has gotten through other people. So I support it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ron. Steve, you're up.
Well, I hope it goes without saying I'm very supportive of the tennis project. I'm an avid tennis player, as many of you know. I'm also an avid golfer. So it is extremely important to me that we take good care of the golf course and the tennis facilities. And by the way, I thank Jerry for bringing up pickleball. I think it's very important that we address the needs of the pickleball community. You go by there any morning and you see huge lines of people waiting for a chance to play pickleball. I think one thing that's really important, I don't want to overwhelm people with numbers, but the association has about $2 million in its reserves. Now, most of that is restricted for paving, roofs, painting, and so forth. But as of the last count I had, roughly $650,000 or so is unrestricted reserves. Those, now, because of the golf course project, those reserves are going to be drawn down to some extent. But they are replenished every month to the tune of $44,000. So every time your monthly maintenance is taken out of your checking account, a good chunk of that is going into the piggy bank, into the association reserves, so that we have funds for roads and, yes, to replace the tennis courts. And so I don't, there shouldn't be any notion out there that, oh my gosh, we're going broke, we're spending all this money. I think the board has been and Sean have been very conscientious about managing the reserves, and will continue to be very conservative and careful in that regard. Thank you.
Okay, Carl?
Recently, the board approved the funding for an engineering study to renovate tennis courts 1 through 4, which have not been renovated for a number of years. I don't know the exact number, but I'm sure Steve does. All of our amenities here at Seven Lakes are important, and we have to take care of all of them. Tennis is one of the main amenities. Gets a lot of play and a lot of use and a lot of visibility from people who visit our community. I'm in favor of the renovation, and I'm confident after studying all of the current reports that there will be funds in the reserve account, plus over $100,000, which has been mentioned as guaranteed donations to meet the cost of the project. But the most important aspect of the project will be approval by the Southwest Florida Water Management District, and I hope that happens. Steve's right. I'll give you the exact amount that we had as of November 30th, 2019, in the reserve account. We had $2,089,773. I wish we had time. I wish many of you would spend a couple of hours with me going over that reserve account. I could give you a great education on where your money is, where it's going, and what the problems have been. The problems with the reserve account and funding are not really with painting, paving, and road reserves. It's in that last item called deferred maintenance and asset replacements. That's about 6 pages, if you've ever looked at it, in the reserve study. And for years, we've been told that there's X number of dollars in this account. And there is money in it. $2 million is nothing to sneeze at. So there's money to do things, but we have to make sure that those numbers are correct. And this is where reserve study will help us. And I can tell you, I've spent hundreds of hours in the years I've been on this board, and that's not an exaggeration, looking at that reserve study. And I'd be more than happy, I didn't bring it with me, I wish I had, to go over it with anyone, and I can explain to you pretty simply how it works. Thank you. Good job. What's that?
Right on time.
Right on time.
Yeah, right on, we practiced that earlier. Jerry, you're up.
Well, being last, everything's already been talked about. That being said, sure.
He likes to talk.
And Carl touched on it. No matter how much money we have, no matter how good our intentions are, no matter how much our desires are, and I support the tennis. It's up to Southwest Florida Water Management District that will say yes or no. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Okay, on to our next question. And this is an interesting one in that it sort of ties into the financial picture of Seven Lakes and, of course, the residents that live here. This question was submitted by Mary Pushek, Condo 40. And the question is, what are residents who have been long-term owners to do when they're priced out of our community by rising assessments and fees? These residents have been actively contributing to the care and cost of this community, and because their incomes are fixed, not rising, does the board have a fiduciary responsibility to stop the initiation of desired and not structurally needed projects? And Jerry, we ended with you, so we're going to start with you.
Thanks, Tom, I appreciate that. Boy, I don't even know where to start on this one. The board is very conscious